And so now I want to turn this over to Amy McKinney, the Lawrence County Planning Director, to get us started. And welcome to the stage the State of the Region panel.
Good morning. I'm Amy McKinney. I am the County Planning Director for Lawrence County, and I'm happy to be here today to serve as the moderator for the State of the Region panel. If our panelists are making their way up to their table, we'll get started here. But today we're here to learn about what's happening in broadband around the region. We have Andy Waple, who is SPC's Deputy Executive Director for Programs, and he will give his regional perspective. We have Lance Grable he's the Director of Beaver County Planning and Redevelopment, and he's going to talk about planning and surveys that Beaver County has been doing. Heidi Norman is the Director of Department of Innovation and Performance for the City of Pittsburgh. She's going to talk about access and equity. And Commissioner Mike Belding, who is the Chairman of the Greene County Board of Commissioners, will tell us about the implementation that Greene County has been working on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy, but just a reminder, again, there are note cards on the table. If you have questions while our panelists are speaking and you just want to hold it up, we'll have our SPC staff grab those, and hopefully we'll have time at the end of this panel for some questions. So with that, Andy.
All right, thank you, Amy. And again, I just want to thank all of you for your time today, especially our sponsors, our panelists, our moderators, and of course our commissioners. So I wanted to provide a little bit of context today as to why we're here. As Commissioner Oshie noted, we've got a lot of areas within the region that are lacking affordable high-speed internet access. And as shown on the map on the screen here, you can see we have a long way to go to achieve connectivity to all corners of the region. As part of this panel, we wanted to inform you of where we stand as a region in terms of speed and access, but also to showcase some of the great work that's going on across the region to address these critical issues. And again, as Commissioner Oshie said, SPC has developed the connectivity roadmap with many of you present today, and it contains a comprehensive set of goals and strategies that are both data and human-driven. So digging a little bit deeper into the data, the mapping shows a significant number of households, businesses, and community anchor institutions lacking connectivity. It also shows a distinct digital divide between the urban and rural areas of the region. As you can see on the screen there, that is a kind of a screenshot of one of our county profiles. That one is for the entire region, and those are available on the website for use for all of you and the general public to just give us a kind of a baseline of where the region stands on access, accessibility, adoption, and digital equity. So our approach within the connectivity roadmap, we did something that we think is very unique. You know, a lot of regional organizations and counties and other entities, when they map broadband, they kind of just look at speed and that's it. What we wanted to do is dig a little bit deeper and look at the socioeconomic and demographic makeup of the region as compared to areas of access and equity and speed. So what we did here is we developed a set of connectivity opportunity areas. These areas are used as the equity component in the project analysis and prioritization process for the connectivity roadmap and represent the intersection of the areas that have the lowest adoption and access and also where the most vulnerable populations reside in the region. Disabled populations, populations with limited English proficiency, low-income populations. So when you start to look at this and you look at those two things together, it really paints the picture across the region of where the greatest need is. These mapping tools have provided very, very useful in developing plans for prioritizing our areas, such as in the middle mile application we submitted. And then also a number of our counties have also been using these online mapping applications in their planning and prioritization, such as Washington County when they're planning their deployment projects. So finally, I'd like to note some of what we heard through our public and stakeholder engagement, conducting the outreach for our connectivity roadmap. As you can see on the screen, we did a multi-pronged, multifaceted campaign with surveys, workshops, community conversations. That's where we went out into the community and interviewed folks and talked with them to learn from the human side what really broadband internet means to them and you know, where they don't have it, and really to capture that human aspect that we can use again in our prioritization, but also use in storytelling, telling the story to funders and grant applications of the human side of broadband access. We held these locations, one in every county. We held them in libraries, schools, community organizations. We also did held one at the Latino Community Center and did a virtual Spanish-speaking session. So again, those goal was to uplift these voices from our community to aid in providing equitable internet access for all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lance Grable, the Director of Planning for Beaver County, and he's going to talk about the Beaver County's planning effort that they undertook prior to COVID. So they were really the first ones in the region to undertake the connectivity planning at the county level. So, Lance?
Thank you, Andy. First of all, thanks, SPC. I've put some programs together and had try to do this sort of thing a few times with probably half as many people that are here, and it is a monumental task. The planning and everything that you guys have done to put this on has been remarkable. It's great so far. I'm sure it's going to continue that way. So thank you very much for that, and all the sponsors. We thank you as well. As Andy said, Beaver County was one of the first to jump into this. Bunch of different reasons why, and maybe we'll probably hit that as we go, continue on and go a little bit through this later. But just want to walk you through our process, just the planning process, kind of what we did and how we got to where we are today. And really, it started with a conversation between me and Michael Baker, Jeremy Jerk from Michael Baker. I told him I wanted to connect every single person in my county. To be honest with you, at that time, I had no idea how many were not connected. It's so hard to imagine that there are people who are unserved because of what we do every day. It's tough to imagine that. So in order to do that, I'm like, this is what we have to do. Let's go move forward with it. Surprisingly enough, Michael Baker said, yeah, let's roll. Let's see what we can do. And we jumped on it and started moving into, obviously one of the first things we did was grab the FCC data and took a look at that. We know that that data is provided to them, and we knew that there was going to be some anomalies to that we were going to have to look at. I actually had them create me a dashboard because I also honestly didn't know how many ISPs were that served Beaver County. I was surprised. I believe there were like 11 or 12 of them. And I had no idea that there are that many. I also realized that there was a gap in knowledge base of what fixed internet was compared to mobile, compared to a lot of different things, even satellite. So that dashboard that they created was just incredible for me to be able to see what speeds you could do what at, understanding exactly how many ISPs we had, where they were at, what service they provided. So the dashboard was unbelievable. We also knew, of course, that with that, there's some areas in there that we were going to have to investigate. They had we were trying to find the worst of the worst. So there wasn't funding available at the time. We thought we were going to have to nickel and dime it to try to figure out where we could find funding. So we were looking for the worst of the worst. I was trying to find areas that had no coverage for mobile and had did not have fixed internet. And then we could start to identify throughout the county if we got some funding, where could we spend it? Where were we going to go first? And we were going to try worst of the worst and then kind of keep moving our way forward. The pandemic hit. There was a bunch of work that was done in between there, but the pandemic hit, and because of that, ARPA funds became available, and my commissioners agreed, surprisingly, to put a lot of money into this. We were pretty happy about it, and they've been, our 3 commissioners and my state reps have been just unbelievable, along with the Broadband Authority, in helping us along the way and being there every step of the way. So we grabbed every single ISP that we could identify. We sat down and had a communication with all of them over, it was a couple weeks. We were just in meeting after meeting, but we wanted to make sure that they knew exactly what it was that we were doing and how we were going about doing it. We were pleasantly surprised that they were happy because of what we were doing. So we had created a website. We created the survey that we had sent out. We were knocking on doors, getting information from people. We had a lot of phone calls. Michael Baker did an unbelievable job of taking in questions and calls and making sure they were back to every single person. They documented everything. We knew every person that came in had a response within 24 hours. We knew what they wanted. We knew where they were at. So it was phenomenal. The website they created, Connect Beaver County, was also unbelievable. It lists all the different things that we were doing. Excuse me. So as we walked through the process, we realized that through the surveys, through all the questions, through all the contact that we had with people throughout the county, that there was a time that we were going to have to go just put boots on the ground and go out to all these different areas based off an algorithm that Michael Baker has to understand the FCC data and kind of get an idea of where we need to look based off of the if one then all in the census tract. So with all of these tools in our hand and all this information in our hand, set out a deployment, boots on the ground deployment, and started going out throughout the county. They spent, oh geez, I don't want to say it wrong, a little over 2 months. Yeah, is that right? Thanks. About a little over 2 months just going around literally knocking on doors. I was, honestly, I was expecting about 50,000 calls from people in the county asking what it's going on, because we also have a reassessment happening. And I didn't want there to be any confusion or anybody waiting at the door for Michael Baker as they showed up. Fortunately, that didn't happen. Matter of fact, we got a ton of calls, some really good calls from our residents. And every single one, I didn't have one bad call. Every single one was in support of what we're doing. So that created a nice groundswell for us. So they were able to go out, identify what we believe is a really good number of every single person in our county that is unserved. And from there, put all of that information together. We had 82 polygons that we put out an RFP. So there's 82 polygons with a myriad of, right now it's over 1,800 residents or homes that need to be connected, and put out that RFP. We got some really, really good responses from our ISPs. And once again, I take that back to the communication. We met with the individual ISPs multiple times, so we understood what they needed, what was best for them. As far as if we're going to go out and do this, we realized that with the pandemic, we have supply chain issues and that sort of thing. So our goal was to make sure that they always knew where we were at, what step we were in, so that they could always be prepared if they were going to come in and win an award for the RFP. So we are at that process now. That all the proposals came back in. We had some great proposals. We're reviewing them all, and we're gonna be ready real soon to start the deployment. We're not there yet. There's a couple other decisions that we have to make, and then, no offense to anybody here, but then the legal stuff gets involved. So that could take some time. It's always frustrating to me because I'm ready to roll and other people smarter than me have to figure out exactly what to do. But we're in that process now, and once we get through that and get this rolling, we're hoping that we can have the entire county covered by at some point in 2024, maybe 2025.
Yep, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi Norman. I'm the CIO and the Director of Innovation and Performance for the City of Pittsburgh. Again, I want to say thank you to the SPC. These types of events are incredibly important and also really difficult to pull off. So you guys have done a great job and really appreciate that. And thank you to our sponsors. One of the reasons I think something like this is so incredibly important, and I'm thrilled with the timing, is a lot of what Lance was talking about. I identify with this. You know, he's from a county that has rural areas and lots of folks with no access to high-speed broadband internet. I'm from the largest municipality in the region, and I'm not in the same place. But what we have in common is that we're trying to learn as fast as we can because we don't have all the answers. So what you're going to see from me are a whole lot of questions because I think that we can learn from each other. As the CIO for a large municipality, I'm probably several steps ahead of those of you who are struggling to even get people connected. But I'm the voice of the future. You will start struggling with the questions that I'm struggling with now. So I'm here to share with you those challenges that I'm facing, and hopefully this can help inform you, and perhaps you can avoid some of the potholes that I tend to step in. Okay, so in terms of digital access in the urban environment and perhaps the future of many of your counties, within Pittsburgh, we have over 86% of our people who actually have access and are connected. But when you look at the numbers, what that means is I've got 41,000 residents that do not have broadband subscriptions. So I'm going to talk about equity and access and equity and affordability, right? So the census from 2020 shows that 17 of our counties have a population of less than 41,000 people. So I too am also trying to figure out the access is there. Why do I have so many people that are not able to get connected, right? And if we look at the bulk of the funding that's coming out now, and it is the right thing to do, it's really about locations that have no access at all, but that excludes urban centers that have just as many people who are not connected. So what can we do about that? There's fiber that exists all across the city of Pittsburgh, right? That is not our issue. The issue is that fiber is privately owned and it's not accessible to small and locally owned and operated ISPs, which blocks small businesses that want to enter the market and provide that competition. So, and I believe that if we are thinking about mere access, what we are missing is the competition of an open market that can actually bring a lot of benefits to our residents. And so my question is how can we work together to support those economic opportunities, not just for our residents, but for local companies and the workforce by going beyond that mere access toward choice in the internet market? Click. There we go. All right. So digital equity everywhere. So equity goes beyond access, which is what I was talking about. And what we need to do is to identify and address the significant gaps in how our residents know what ISP services are available to them and guidance on how to secure those services at a price point they can afford. The ACP is a wonderful program. I think many of you know, but perhaps some of you do not, that currently the funding for that program runs out next year, right? So this isn't just about how to get started. It's about how do we sustain this operationally, right? digital skills so that people know how to safely and securely use the internet for their needs. And I'm sure many of you are very concerned about their safety and security of their data and other things when they're using the internet. Getting access to a computing device. We know there are studies that show that in the urban core in Philadelphia, in particular, that over 50% of the Black and Latin American families are only using mobile devices to access the internet. Those devices are not sufficient for them to be able to take advantage of online training and classes, video conferences and healthcare, all kinds of things that are related to applying for a job. Imagine trying to fill out all of those forms on a little bitty screen. And if it's a single parent household and mom goes to work and takes her phone with her, everyone who's left at home now has no access to the internet, right? So thinking about the devices that people need, and then of course, help when the technology breaks, right? Or suddenly the multi-factor authentication isn't working properly, or whatever it is, and people don't know what to do. Who do they turn to? So these are the types of things that we're thinking about, not just in Pittsburgh, but all across Allegheny County, through an organization called the Pittsburgh Digital Equity Coalition, which is a coalition of 20 or so organizations, many of whom you will hear from today, that are really thinking about how do we provide these wraparound services and be able to sustain them over the long term. Bink. I feel like if I say something like Shazam, it'll happen. Okay, thank you. How can we fundamentally change the equation to close the gaps for digital equity once and for all, and to sustain the most effective programs for current and future generations? One of our colleagues, Dr. Christopher Ali, who was at Penn State, just published an article that some of you may have read that talks about, that basically, I think he was talking to me, he said, stop talking about closing the digital divide, particularly in rural areas. We need to figure out how to create sustainable programs that are going forward, not just in the next 5 years, but forward decades. And I think he's really right about that. Shazam. Okay. All right. So here is my recommendation, and I know the folks from the PBDA and others have heard this before from me, but I want to say don't count out local government and cooperatives in Pennsylvania. We know that last fall, the NTIA clarified that states will need to certify whether they're going to waive their anti-muni laws. And those laws effectively prevent, in many respects, local governments and cooperatives from providing ISP services in their community unless we provide them for free, right? Broadband Now then published a study that shows that every state surrounding Pennsylvania has rescinded any legal restrictions they had on municipal and publicly owned networks. That makes Pennsylvania the least competitive state for residential and business broadband, right? And my friend over here from Greene County is going to talk about that because Greene County is bordered on two sides by West Virginia, which is actually doing better than we are. Why is that happening, right? So we need to think about how it is that we can catapult Pennsylvania to be the most competitive state in the region for economic opportunities related to broadband expansion. There is so much money and opportunity flowing. We should not be thinking, what can we accomplish to get us across the line? We need to be thinking about this as the electrification of the country, a once-in-a-generation opportunity to do something remarkable in Pennsylvania and blow the competition out of the water. Did I mention I like questions? Yeah, okay, Shazam. Okay, so sustainable broadband for PA. So I think that there are really some core principles that we can all agree upon, and I hope that I hope that Lance, as you're planning, because you're doing a phenomenal job, that you'll be thinking about this with me and helping me to think these things through. I think we need to, under the auspices of the SPC, really think about collaboration. We need to be talking about how we can connect. Our roads and bridges and tunnels don't end at our county's borders or at our city's borders, right? We need to connect the region, and we need to do it in a way that's planned for that. We need to provide freedom of choice for our residents. We want to be open and transparent about our shared resources, and I want us to be requiring public reporting on baseline speeds and pricing by all ISPs. And it should be an apples to apples comparison so consumers understand what their choices are. I would like barrier-free connections, universal baseline connectivity, regardless of ability to pay, and with a simple sign-up process. Please don't make folks complete form after form after form. I know it's asking a lot, but the folks who need to fill out those forms are the ones that can least afford to spend the time trying to fill out those forms, right? Or getting to the local library to fill out the form. And we need it to be self-sustaining, and this is the big thing that I think we all should be really thinking about beyond the hard work of, it's so hard just to get everyone connection and access, but we still need to be thinking about how can we make this sustainable, because the money that's coming now is for the initial build, right? What about for the future, and how can we have this available for the long term in a way that makes sense? Shazam. Okay. So what I'm asking is, and saying is that together, I really believe that we can innovate to answer these key questions so that we can deliver economic opportunities for everyone, regardless of whether they are an individual, a head of household, trying to start a small business. They've got a going business concern and they want to connect in with one of the large ISPs to provide something new and different in terms of differentiation with their competition. I think that this is something that we can do together, and it really has to be done together. I'm stepping off my soapbox now. Shazam. To introduce Mike Belding. He's from the Greene County Commissioner. He's one of the board commissioners, and he's done a really interesting thing over the last several years in Greene County in terms of actually implementing in one of our rural counties, and again, up against West Virginia, which is traditionally and historically, as I understand it, really providing some serious challenges in terms of competition. So.
Thank you, Heidi. Which one of these? There you go.
Yes, the one on the right.
Okay, hopefully you can see that with the great background. As others have mentioned, thank you to SPC and the sponsors. It's not often that Greene County gets on the stage, right? So we appreciate that. We are unique as a county. We have a history of fossil fuel driving our economy. Years ago, decades ago, it was 50% of our taxable revenue. Now it's about 30%. And we have struggled to diversify the economy to fill that 20% gap. So we have specific challenges, not helped by the bordering state of West Virginia. So there's a lot of advantage for business, West Virginia University, the hospital system, and so forth, just south of us that kind of draws technology, infrastructure, building, business, and everything away from our county. So we struggle to compete with not only our Pennsylvania neighbors, but also our West Virginia neighbors. And one of the thoughts of broadband installation in Greene County is to offer different opportunities to diversify the economy with both business, industry, and individuals that can live there but work anywhere. So that was one of our focuses. Let me take you back to about 2019. So this is my first term as a county commissioner. We're running a campaign in 2019, and almost everybody we talked to complained about access to broadband. There are specific and unique challenges to rural broadband installation for cost. You know, we go the country mile and pick up 2 or 3 access points for potential clients for that ISP. where in other places you may go 100 yards and pick up. So there's challenges with the installation cost versus customer base and the business model for those ISPs. So first in 2020, BC, as Leslie said, before COVID, we recognized as a priority for new leadership in the county after that 2019 election that broadband was going to be one of our priorities. My background's in the military, not technology, right? I mean, I knew Control-Alt-Delete was about my speed, so when in doubt, we searched out subject matter experts, as Beaver County was talking about. So with that initiative, we kind of went through the traditional, if government's going to spend money, you do the RFP, you figure out who your friends are, what their knowledge base are, and pick one of those. And I won't walk through all these bullets, but it was a very customary search for people that were going to help us with this problem, just like we would do for any other service. But it was unique to Greene County. I think 40% of our population were either underserved or unserved at the time, and we sought solutions for that. It was fortuitous to us to have started that before the pandemic hit, right? So we had some baseline data information that was coming in. We knew where we needed to get a little bit more defined problems. And there's a lot of talk about the FCC data. We found that we needed local data, particularly in rural communities. It's really hard for the federal government to define where you have and where you do not have service. So we entered into non-disclosure agreements with the ISPs, and so they're one of the bumper stickers, if you will, that we tout is this is a big problem with local solutions, because those ISPs are going to be your service providers, and they may only have a footprint in a community of 5,000 people or 7,000 people, or they may have tentacles that go miles and collect small groups of villages or crossroads of a community, and those are all unique. So we needed the information from their network availability, their capacity, and their capabilities. So we had non-disclosure agreements with those individuals. It was fortuitous in the fact that we didn't have any funding available. So as all those solutions were developed, all of them boiled down to our county for gig speed fiber optic cable. Towers are out because of the topographic, the hills and valleys and all those other things. So we set our sights on 100% solution of gig speed fiber optic cable to every household, business, and industry in Greene County. And that's what we're implementing at the time. Not having money at the county level, it was welcoming to see the CARES Act funding become available. All three county commissioners unanimously agreed to put almost half of our allocation of CARES Act funding into the first implementation of broadband projects in Greene County that were resolved, the problems were resolved in this feasibility study. So that first RFP went out. We have a great industry partner. Of the five that are available, 3 inquired, 1 responded, and more than doubled our input into that first installation project. So we put 220 miles of fiber optic cable in, 8,300 homes, businesses, gig speed capability access before CARES Act funding requirements closed out in December of 2020. Phenomenal project. People talk about the stars aligning. You know, we had the data, we received the funding, and our industry partner had pre-planned projects that were unfunded. And it all matched up, and we closed those out by December of 2020. As we see in a lot of programs, and get the next slide, success brings more opportunity, right? When you invest smartly and get a big bang for your dollars, you're likely rewarded with more money. So we went through the process of ARC grant funding. It was awarded in September of 21. That was a $2.5 million grant to continue the work that was outlined in the feasibility study. my previous career was in the military, so I try to keep things really simple to describe Napoleon's theory, right? Napoleon's corporal. So I liken this to garden hoses. You know, you're not going to drill a well where your garden is. You're going to run a hose to get the next water requirement down the same thing. We just keep extending the capability of these fiber optic cables to more and more rural areas. That 8,300 in the initial investment was a low-hanging fruit. That was the outskirts of our more densely populated residential areas. The farther we go, the harder it gets and the more expensive it gets per installation and per opportunity to give access. So the ARC, the engineering's finalized, the environmental, we're weeks away, I think, from doing that. Know that, this isn't a secret, federal regulations draw out the planning process and the implementation process. And it has been extremely painful at the federal level to spend money on these programs. But we're gonna install 92 miles of fiber optic cable, almost 1,000 homes and businesses. That will be on the southern tier of Greene County that borders West Virginia, and they have an opportunity to migrate into the West Virginia rural areas south of the Mason-Dixon line. Again, industry partners ponied up more than the match, more than 100% of the match, which is really phenomenal for that implementation. And the third one I'll talk about briefly is philanthropic contributions. So natural gas industry, you know, the big power drivers of your economic taxable assets give back to the communities too. I mean, we see it all the time, whether it's a 4-H sale or a nonprofit church organization or something. CNX Foundation, kind of as their flagship when they split the company assets, announced a $1 million donation to Greene County specific to rural broadband. So we went through the same process, RFPs, picking up 100 plus homes and businesses, 31 miles. Unique to this investment, every other kind of investment when it comes through government has restrictions to it, right? Your CDBG, for instance, you're supposed to look for low and moderate income, and all these other programs. This is unrestricted funding. It's just a philanthropic donation of $1 million. So we went back out. Where can we not invest restricted funding, right? So we're going to pick up gaps that were never scheduled through RDOF or other programs to get broadband, and we're going to deliver broadband to them with this money. Interesting, in this case, one of them is a state park, Ryerson State Park, which was never on the schedule, and nobody lives there, right? But when we get broadband there, now the campers can have Wi-Fi and access and so forth. So it draws more people that want to camp but be connected. You know, rural but reachable. That's one of the things that we talk about. So unique in its application that it's really unrestricted. Of course, all the industry standards, EPA, all that stuff still applies, but we're not cow-tied to specific requirements of the funding streams. So that one's in the works as well. Environmental's going through, and that'll be complete in 2024. Like was mentioned, our target in Greene County is to have every house available access, every business available access, and our industry partners available access with gig speed across the spectrum of the rural county by 2024 or 25. And I think we're on. There are really, I call it tragic, that might not be a good word, but you know, when our kids were not in school, we ran school buses to deliver and pick up homework. Empty school buses. You know, so you talk about the inefficiencies of not having service. That's a really good example because these school buses ran empty simply to pick up and drop off packages of homework. So, you know, prioritizing the implementation of broadband in the county, all those add up to about $9 million if you're keeping track of that, and none of it was Greene County taxpayer money. That's one of the flags we like to wave. There's an opportunity cost with CARES Act funding. Granted, I mean, that was money that could have been spent specific to the county budget or what have you, but the rest of it is all applied for and dedicated to broadband installation. One of the things I wanted to mention was the authority, the Broadband Authority and other organizations like that, and they're doing great work, drilling down on the FCC and getting data fixed and all of that. Those are all contributory when you get data and your ISP provider can use it or your contractor can use it. But we found that our solution is local because our limited ISP providers all have a business border, right? They don't really compete with one another. It may be different in more urban areas where a household can choose between Comcast, Kinetic, and another one. But in Greene County, you get one provider. And we found that it was important to work locally with those individuals, and it was really effective that way. So we're unique maybe in that stream. I think other rural counties will find the same thing. We like competition. It drives down the price. It increases performance. But when it's not there, you really have to work really close locally with your service providers. And again, we appreciate the opportunity to talk about Greene County and our broadband initiatives. We look forward to the rest of the summit.
We do have some time for some questions, and our panelists can answer those for you. So if you do have some questions, take your note card, hand it up, and our staff will be coming around to gather them. Oh, we have a lot of questions, guys. I'll start with one actually for Andy. As the regional planning organization, how do you see the best way that you guys can assist your local governments in organizing these initiatives?
Sure. Thank you, Amy. That's a great question. So, as the regional planning organization, I think our role in all of this is technical assistance. We have a lot of, as demonstrated today by up here on the stage, my colleagues, as well as some of the other counties that are just doing a tremendous job on their own in terms of either planning or securing funding or whatever it may be. I see our role as support to our partners and to our members, our counties in the city of Pittsburgh. Within SPC, we have created a connectivity resource center where when we selected our consultant to do our connectivity roadmap, we also retained them for a period of 3 years to provide on-call technical services to us and our constituents and our members. So while we don't physically at SPC have the expertise maybe to answer all the questions, our team of consultants, they're just a wide range of, it's a wide-ranging team from everything from implementation and technical assistance to public engagement to media outreach, whatever it may be. We are poised and we are ready to assist our partners and our members and our constituents with basically whatever their need may be. We were able to secure funding from some of our philanthropic organizations, our foundations within the region to help fund those activities over the next few years. So, we see this broadband connectivity as a form of transportation, as in the last 2 years under COVID has really solidified that. People are using it for doctor's appointments, for online learning, for connecting with friends. So it really serves the same purpose as a bus or a road or a bridge or a bicycle. So, really in our eyes, and I think this is being shared by an increasing amount of regional planning organizations across the country who are now diving into broadband connectivity. We're here to support you. We have the resource center up and running. We have mapping, we have data, we have support for grant applications, we have support for public outreach, whatever it may be. We are ready to help.
There it is. Thank you. Appreciate that. One of the questions is, will the slides shared at the presentation be available for the attendees to download? Yes, it will be on the Eventbrite. Yep. Heidi asked some pointed questions about the importance of competition and agreeing on a set of principles for use of public broadband dollars. What is the response of our other panel members? Lance, you wanna?
Sure, just put me on the spot. That's no. I think, I think Heidi made some really, really good points, and I really appreciated some of the things you had to say because some of the other avenues that we are working. So came here to talking about what Beaver County is doing, connecting homes. We have a couple other silos that we're doing in a digital navigator program, taking a look at, so the funding that we had is able to be used to connect. That meant that my rural areas were going to have a connection, probably better than some of our river towns and some of our inner cities. And then in addition to that, the funding that I had was so to be used for the unserved that I had a big majority of our residents that weren't going to be able to get any funding. So we were able to come up with, was once again, one of the things we went back and forth on. Like, I want to be able to do something for them. And we got to figure out what the right thing to do is. And Kirsten and Michael Baker have done so much to go and do the research. And some of the information you gave, I kept looking over at Kirsten because it's so many things that we've seen out there. And it's great to have you validate some of that research that we've seen. And we're ready to initiate a digital navigator program, making it easier to go through the ACP, which is, like, if you've ever done it, is a pain. So you couldn't be more accurate with some of these questions that you're asking and trying to bring everything together. Like, we can't, like, my whole thing is I don't want to forget about a single person in my county. My county is the best county that there is. No offense to anybody else. But because of the people that are there. So I guess it's sort of an answer to your question, but I loved what you had to say. I was just so attuned in some of the figures and some of the things that you had, because that's exactly what we've gone through. That's what we've been we've been trying to push, and it's with our commissioners right now to allow us to go ahead and we're ready to roll on that stuff. So thank you for bringing that.
Do you want to answer?
Well, I mean, our goal is the same. So Greene County has 35,000 residents. It's hard to say that none of them deserve this service, right? I mean, everybody deserves the same thing. So, but if you go back to the rural nature of this, and we connect down roadways and previously used easements and right-of-ways and so forth, we're going to get all of them. And the 35,000 number is much more manageable than, 50 or 70,000 when you look at trying to get in much more densely populated areas and then out to the rural areas. We want to treat all of our residents the same. We would like to see more opportunity for alternative technologies. In some cases, they may be cheaper. To be honest, this $1 million from CNX is very expensive installation per household, but we have no other way to get it right now. So I guess our bottom goal is a competition through technology, but at the end of the day, we want every resident, business, and industry in Greene County to have the same access at an affordable rate.
And I'd just like to close on that particular question by saying, all of us here are very used to thinking about roads, bridges, tunnels, right? And those roads, bridges, tunnels generally don't stop at the edge of the municipality or at the edge of the county. If I want to connect to Greene County, there's a few other places that I have to go through to get there, which is why forums like this and the realization that, he may be from a county and I'm from a large municipality, but we're all dealing with the same things, and we're all trying to learn how to do this and do this well. And it's a really quick ramp up that we've been challenged with to try and get our arms around this. So the collaboration and the sharing of these stories and the questions of how can we do better for everyone, no matter where they live, no matter where they're from, or what their challenges and struggles are, that is, I think, our shared goal and purpose.
I think just on the border, I mean, down to emergency service responses across the Mason-Dixon line are challenging. And the two worlds are so far apart between Pennsylvania as a commonwealth and business rules, statutes, ordinances, and laws, and West Virginia. They are so different. It might as well be a wall right there. I mean, it's really hard to work across the state line.
Do we have any other additional closing remarks or thoughts from the panel? I want to thank you all very much for your time today. It was very interesting and we appreciate it. And with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Oshie.
No, it's good. Great.